Yeah, I'm Toby Aykroyd, and my background actually is in development economics and business with a little bit of political lobbying. And I helped set up a foundation called wildE around 2004 originally, although we formally launched in 2009. Our main objective is the restoration and protection on a large scale of natural ecosystem areas. But in addition to the environmental facets of that, we place very strong emphasis on using economic and enterprise arguments to promote that restoration and protection. So what we've done basically is to work behind the scenes to try and provide input to policy and strategy. And at the same time, we've teamed up with other organizations to try and push across some of the principles that are required to let that succeed on a large scale. Let nature do it for you on as big a scale as possible. I think that is fundamental to our principles. First of all, because nature has a valid role in its own right. But secondly, because it's an extremely cost-effective way of achieving other objectives. So carbon storage, carbon sequestration, biodiversity enrichment, ecotourism, flood mitigation, clean water, so on and so forth. But there are other less obvious benefits, and one is a sense of identity. And then, as I mentioned, there are the less well-articulated benefits, particularly the social ones, addressing contemporary urban problems, youth problems, delinquency, drug addiction, domestic violence, physiological disorders, mental health issues. The ability to experience and engage with wilderness has an extraordinary impact that is very effective indeed in dealing with individual issues and is highly cost effective as well. As a sector, conservation is not good at translating environmental benefits into economic gain in a way that can value that gain and translate it into a higher priority for conservation policies alongside all the competing policies in the political agenda, but also into hardcore funding, which is obviously essential. And that funding must come not just from official sources, whereas we know there are a lot of constraints, but also that implies the need to fill the gap rapidly and effectively from the private sector, and particularly corporations. And there is an immense confluence of interests, which is often not recognized through ecosystem services, and the whole issue of carbon and biodiversity credits, for example. So in other words, you're taking what has previously just been a conservation arena and a conservation concern, and you're relating it to the proportions of the economy that are affected, and you're bringing on side a very much broader alliance of interests than conservation alone will ever manage to bring together. So consumers, taxpayers, business people, politicians, etc. It's a very wide alliance, but it's a very practical alliance with a lot more common interests than they recognize. And that includes the farmers, the fishermen, and the foresters themselves, all of whom can benefit from this new agenda. We have the honor to be represented in FCC, for example, which I mentioned earlier, Fundacja Conservation Carpathia, which is aiming to buy up a lot of land and influence a lot more land in the Carpathian Mountains in Romania to create a national park between 200, possibly 250,000 hectares. These are very big areas, but if you put them all together and you implement the sort of community benefit program that FCC is now specializing in, you gain the support of local people. And that is what really establishes the sustainability of a project more than any other aspect. Seeing is believing. And for people to be able to go into these areas and see for themselves what they're doing for nature, but also what they're doing to benefit humans. That's another big misconception about rewilding. It is not about shutting out humans. It's very human-centered. Just because it's about natural process, that can be misleading. And the number of times I've seen senior decision takers going into wild areas and they suddenly realize what they're all about, having thought previously they were a bit of a way out luxury that wasn't really that important for contemporary societal needs. Their attitude changed completely when they have direct experience.